This is Advisor 3.0, a show designed to help you as a financial advisor elevate your professional practice, transform your clients' lives, and take your business to the next level. I am Abraham Okusanya. Welcome to the show. A lot's been said about, on this podcast certainly, about how you get a firm up and running, how you think about succession plan, several things going on in the industry. But what does that journey look like from the perspective of someone who has started and run a solo practice, sold and exited the business, and figured out what's next for their career? That's what my conversation today is about with the incredible Mary Waring. Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Abraham, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Mary, you and I met several years ago. It must be, I can't remember, 7, 8 years ago, something of that
2016.
nature. 2016.
And the reason I know is that I became directly authorised in 2017 and obviously needed to sort an investment proposition and realised that was way beyond my abilities.
Yeah,
so that's why I spoke to you.
Yeah, and I still very much remember our conversation back then. But just for the purpose of our listener, take us a little bit back, all right? Yeah. You came into the financial advice profession after being an accountant, right?
Yeah.
So tell us the backstory, and then we can kind of walk from there to where we are today.
Yeah, so I came into qualified as an IFA in 2012. So, right. Quite late, for an age, considering lots of people my age have been in the industry forever. So I've been a finance director in employed positions, definitely decided I didn't want to be employed. I think I maybe made some bad decisions about positions I'd accepted, but I had a few, let's just call them bad bosses, and then thought, I can't keep doing this. I cannot keep moving from one firm to another, working for someone I do not respect, I do not get on with. So I thought, well, I better go and work for myself. And initially, so this was 2005, I became a mortgage advisor.
Right.
And one of the reasons was, well, I do have a real interest in property, but even as a chartered accountant, the amount of exams you have to do is enormous. And that really put me off. And I thought, I know I'm going to be a mortgage advisor because then there's a lot less exams. And to start with, that was fantastic. The business grew really well. I was just at the point of going to recruit a few other people to come and work for me because I was getting a lot of inquiries. So I thought, well, I know what I'll do. I'll go out and, meet people and get inquiries. And then I'll have other staff actually getting on, doing the research and getting on with it. And then 2008 came along, global financial crisis, interest rates, just ridiculous. Nobody was lending. Nobody was moving house. And I sat around for a while thinking it's fine, it will get better. And of course it didn't. And the reason why I hadn't done the IFA exams was I didn't really have the time. And because the mortgage business was successful, I thought, why do I want to go and do a whole load more exams? I'll keep doing this. But of course, then I didn't have any business. So I thought, well, I might as well do my exams now. And I don't remember how many exams I did, but I just decided to put my head down and just get on and power through. And I did them all in, I think, like maybe a year or 15 months. And I went from mortgage advisor to chartered. And again, I thought I particularly want chartered. I did a few little bits of exams just to get me some extra points. and went to chartered and just thought, that's it, no more exams. But
sorry, carry on.
No, so I was going to say, but of course then you've got exams and think, what do I do now? The exams don't teach you how to do a portfolio, how to do an investment proposition, a portfolio or anything. So I've got to say, a huge gap in learning, without a doubt.
And it wasn't for lack of, understanding of business, because you were a director, finance director in business. It wasn't lack of numeric skills, because you were a chartered accountant, and you powered through the exam in far quicker time than anyone, certainly than I did, and many others. It was, the nature of the beast, the gobbledygookness of, is that the word, of investment management, all of that nonsense.
So I just think it's such a gap in learning that you come out with, all these clever letters after your name, but you still don't know how to do advice. I mean, it's just rubbish, I think, isn't it?
And you've, in a sense, then never been an employed advisor. So once you went through the qualification, you decided, all right, I am going to, I assume you originally worked as as an appointed rep or a self-employed advisor in a firm.
Officially called a registered individual. And that really worked because they had a centralized investment proposition. The power planners did all the reports. So it worked great that you go out, you see the clients, you come back and look, this is what the client needs. And then they got on and did it. Yeah.
And so then in 2018, is it that we said 16?
No, well, I spoke to you in 16 because I got directly authorised 3rd of Jan.
Yeah. So you decided you wanted to go directly authorised at that point. And then you did that. We obviously started working together at that point, and you grew this thing. Talk to me about your experience of essentially growing the business. You'd add some clients at that point, but you grew this thing, from that point for the subsequent 7 odd years. Talk to me about that experience.
And, well, it's interesting because I don't know how much of it is because I came from a totally different industry and how much of it was because I obviously didn't go in during commission.
Yeah.
I went in, and not just because I'm quite awkward and like to do things different, but I actually ran my business very different to a lot of others. So not absolutely from the beginning, but after very early on, I decided I need to charge fixed fees because I didn't like this percentage approach at all. And, if you think about, let's just look for some nice big numbers, someone with 2 million doesn't take you twice as long as someone with 1 million. Now, there's more opportunities there because there's more money, but that didn't make sense to me at all. Also, I mean, my clients were all growing the pot, but I was thinking at the stage when they come to disinvesting, that's actually when you're doing an awful lot more work, because when they're disinvesting, you've got to make sure they've got enough money. And if you're charging a percentage, you're getting less and less and less. So that didn't make any sense to me. And the setup that a lot of people were running at that stage was they did an advice report for not very much and then charged, but it varied, 1%, 3%, whatever it was, for implementation. But to me, implementation was filling in a couple of forms. That's looked a bit like an admin function. So there was so much I looked at and just thought, I'm not going to run my business that way. So I started off quite early charging fixed fees, and I charged one fixed fee which covered advice, cash flow, implementation, with the view that if I do this report and we're not going to implement because we're going to leave your investments where they are, which doesn't often happen. You at least give advice as to, well, let's change something. But it was always on the basis that if we do this and we're not doing an implementation, that there's no reduction, because actually you've had your value in the advice report. Yet to me, the value was purely in the advice report and the financial planning. Filling in a few bits of paper for the implementation really was not of value at all. So I just set my business up very differently from quite early on. I started charging for the initial meeting, because what I realized was I was doing the initial meeting. And again, my proposition was always, I'm going to go to my client. And I asked them to fill in a fact find beforehand. So you do your preparation, you travel to them, you do, I don't know, a 2-hour meeting or whatever it is. And then you come back and you write them a proposition. That's a lot of work. And I thought, well, I'm not doing that for free. And I always felt I gave them a lot of value at that initial meeting. Because they filled the fact finding in advance, we weren't sitting in the meeting with me saying, what are your earnings? I was sitting in the meeting saying, what's important to you? And if you can't afford to do that, where are your priorities? Now, a lot of that was stuff they hadn't thought about. And you're always going to be able to give them a little bit, I don't know, advice, information, whatever you want to call it, at meetings. So even if they decide not to go ahead with you for whatever reason, to me, they've had value from the meeting. So again, I started quite early on charging for my initial meetings. And there was only ever one person who pushed back on it. And he was phoning on behalf of his mother. So he wasn't my end client at all. And possibly, I can't remember, possibly was more used to speaking to advisors who give you an initial meeting without a charge. So he was the only one who pushed back. Everybody else said, yeah, okay, fine. And also I thought, if we're trying to set ourselves up as being on a similar standing as accountants, solicitors, you know, you might go to a solicitor and have 20 minutes, half an hour. You do not get a huge amount of time from a solicitor without a charge. Yeah. So I thought, well, why should I do it?
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a subject that's emotive for many advisors for obvious reasons. Some, I have had people say to me, oh, I don't think we should be trying to be like solicitors in the way that we charge. You know, or accountants, you know, who, you know, maybe are charging by the hour or all of these things. But of course, and they say things like, well, they don't have the advantage that we have in the sense that they don't touch the money, right? We do. We see the money, the investments and all that. But I totally see where you're coming from. And I particularly like how you use the fact find. So many people will say to me, no, just let the client, I don't want to do fact finding in the initial meeting. We might have had phone calls, but like they'll say, I don't want them to do fact find before they come to the initial meeting. Let them just come to me, talk to me, and I'll ask them questions and I'll hold a pen. It's more human. But then what you've done is you've spent, as you said, an hour, maybe 2 hours of your time, you know, giving value, but asking questions, you know, some of which will be no doubt basic. Whereas in your world, when you come into the meeting with a good understanding, you know, a fair, decent understanding of the numbers, you can ask more important questions that are human.
And that's how I used to explain it to clients. Look, firstly, I'm going to come along really prepared because I'm going to have read your fact find. I'm going to have questions to ask. And what it means is that in the meeting, we're talking about the important things as to what matters to you. I'm not asking you, you know, what your national insurance number is or something like that, which, you know, a waste of time for both of us, for me to sit in the meeting and she probably says, oh, I don't know, let me go and look it up. And then half an hour later, you've got the answer. I mean, that's not good use of anybody's time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the opposite of that is someone could say, well, you know, I can do that. I can let the client do the fact find fill-in after that first meeting, but then of course you wouldn't have as much information, the richness and the depth that
Yeah.
you come into meeting. Anyway, enough about
I
fact
was just
finding.
going to say, actually, the thing is as well, I've had probably about an hour's talk on the phone before
Right.
I booked that first meeting. So it's not as
Right.
though the clients phoned me up, said, I'd like a meeting. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, fill the fact finding. I've had an hour discussion as to what are the issues. And then so that at the end of it, I already know I can help her. And that's why I've said, look, I can help you with this. The next stage is a meeting. And in advance of that meeting, I'd like you to fill in this document.
And it's on that call, 1 hour call or whatever it is, that you are in effect saying, this is my fee, this is what I charge. And if I'm going to travel and come to you, then
Yeah.
you are in effect agreeing to, it's a fact. Yeah. And I understand that. And so you charge an initial fee, for the advice. And that includes whether or not they want the implementation, which I totally agree with, because the advice is the value, and I think we need to leave that. Is there then an ongoing AUM based fees if they do sign up and go forward with your recommendation?
Well, that was a fixed fee as well.
All right.
So everything I did was fixed. I did, for all but one client, take it from the investment. And I always recommended to clients it comes from the investment, because otherwise your investment was worth this much last year and now it's worth this much. And you think, wow, look what return I've got. And you're not taking into account that you've paid me by standing order a different amount. One client particularly wanted to do standing order, and I said, fine. But everyone else, I said to them, I recommend my fee comes from the investment, so that when you look at your values and you're comparing two different periods, you've got all your costs taken into account.
This is fascinating. You're a purist, a flat fee.
Oh, yeah.
I like it. Really good. Look, there are pros and cons.
Absolutely. And I think you just have to choose what's right for you. But I could not justify to myself why someone with twice the portfolio of someone else pays twice as much. And I did agree, well, they need to pay more because there's more work, but I could not justify to myself why they'd pay twice as much. And therefore I thought, well, I can't charge a percentage. And why you'd get someone at the lower end really getting a very, very cheap deal, because you're charging them a percentage, but you're probably doing as much work for them as you are for someone with a much larger portfolio.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the client segment that you served. Your brand in the business, and I don't know if you're still keeping this, we had a conversation, was wealthy woman? Was it
Wealth
wealthy
for
women?
women.
Wealth for women, sorry. Yeah,
Wealth for women. Yeah, and I've kept the brand.
So talk to me about that niche, around advising women who may be going through or gone through some sort of separation or divorce, and how their need is different than the wider population.
So my niche was typically midlife women going through divorce. They weren't earning, they were stay-at-home mums. Their husband earned the money and their husband looked after all the finances. And they were generally wealthy, so they didn't budget. People who are on a tight budget know how much everything costs because they got to stick to a budget. If you're not on a tight budget, you don't know how much your shopping costs or how much your holiday costs. So these were women who had lived quite luxurious standard of life. Now, all of a sudden, they were going to be told you're going to get a pot of money and this pot of money is going to last you forever. So even when it's a large pot of money, that is really scary to know there's no more income coming in. And these were women who, like I say, had not looked after the finance at all, didn't know how much anything cost, and actually just felt totally overwhelmed. And, at a time when you're at such a low emotional ebb, and you're then told, tell me how much you need each year for your standard of living. Well, they haven't got a clue at all.
Yeah. I don't know what a loaf of bread costs. So what I spend in a year, now you're going to tell me to figure out what it will be for the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these were all really bright women. But if they were in their 50s, and let's say they got married somewhere in their 20s, they looked after their finance when they were single, but all of a sudden they hadn't looked after it. They looked after the home and the children and the husband, and he earned the money and then said, well, I'm going to look after the finance. That's how, for my clients, that's how it was split. So that's so scary to all of a sudden be asked, how much money do you need going forward? Well, she hasn't got a clue because she hasn't been working to a budget.
And when you, for the most part, when you start to work with them, it's often at the point where they know, the divorce is happening, and they need some hand-holding to negotiate the financial settlement and all of that stuff. And then you got to see them through.
Yeah. And for some women, it was even before they discussed with a solicitor. Right. And I think, again, it was probably discussing with a solicitor sounds like you've definitely made that decision. You've crossed the barrier. Discussing with me was a bit easier as to sometimes they had an idea what their husband earned or something, but it was more, a lot of them had a fear that because they weren't earning and they weren't contributing financially, that they wouldn't get a fair share on divorce. So some women spoke to me very early on to just, well, I'm a bit worried. I've got no idea what things are going to look like. And actually, I'm working with someone now who knows what everything looks like. The husband looks after it, but is sharing information with her. And she wants to get divorced, but wants all her ducks in a row, wants to really understand the implications financially. And of course, I can't give legal advice as to what they're going to get, but I can say, okay, well, let's just assume you're going to split it down the middle. What's it going to look like? So let's say for some of these women, I'm working with them before they've even approached a divorce solicitor. And yeah, for others, it's very early on that they're going through divorce and they're lost. Or quite typical again, because of the type of client I work with, because husband has looked after the money, there is often a bit of this passive-aggressive type approach where he is bombarding her with spreadsheets saying, look how helpful I'm being. But actually, he's bombarding her with spreadsheets deliberately because she's getting totally overwhelmed with it. So a lot of clients have come and said, look, help me understand what on earth any of these proposals mean and what the implications are for me, because he's pushing me to make a decision and I don't understand anything.
We'll come back to the work that you still do on that side, but so you as a financial, when you were a financial advisor, then you grew the business, and at some point, give me an idea of where the business was, whatever metric you're happy to share, and at some point in late 2022, or you started thinking, I have had enough of this regulated financial advice thing, and I want to change. Let's talk about that.
Well, so the business started in Jan 2017, and certainly by 2021, let's say, I'm not sure, I wasn't really looking for new clients. I had the clients I had. I was always going to have a small number of clients because I treated all my clients as vulnerable. They all got a lot of my time, and I did charge a premium for that. So probably by about 2021, I wasn't looking for clients. If a client approached me and I liked them, I would take them on, but I wasn't actively seeking them. But then it was probably around the summer 2022, I decided I wanted to reduce my hours. And I'd done a bit of analysis, you know, the good old spreadsheet came out where I showed, and I can't remember the numbers, but it was something like if I dropped the smallest, probably 2/3 of my clients in numbers, my income would drop by 20% or 30% or what, you know, it was totally. And the reason was that when I first started giving advice, I took anyone and everyone as a client because I wanted to learn.
Yep.
So I didn't say, no, you're a bit small as a client, I'm not interested. I said, yeah, come in, I'm going to work with you because I wanted to learn. But then once I had learned, I just thought, this isn't the market I want to be in. I want to be in. And I was typically saying, you know, minimum 500 grand to invest and probably $1 million. So I had ended up with a number of smaller clients. And so summer 2022, I thought, I think I'm going to look to sell the smaller clients, keep the larger clients, because then actually I've got rid of quite a lot of time, but a much smaller amount of income. And as it turned out, luckily, I didn't find a firm that suited me or who I thought would suit the clients. And so with hindsight, of course, I'm delighted with that because that was August 22. By December 22, I decided I wanted out of financial advice totally. And so then I went the route of selling the company instead.
Why?
So of course you've got all the...
Why did you, Mary, why? You,
Well,
you were, I'm not even sure the phrase to use, chartered financial advisor, sorry, chartered financial planner, chartered accountant that you were from previous life. You were doing great work with clients that you love. You were picky in the sense that you can't afford to.
yeah.
Why?
Well, do you know what? It was a perfect storm of, there were three things that were going really wrong. And if it had been just one of them, maybe even just two of them, I might not. Three of them all came together. So the first issue that came along is, unbeknown to me, FCA hadn't been charging me the right fees. So from 2017, they set me up on the Gabriel system. There was an error. So all the Gabriel returns, there were a number of boxes greyed out that I wasn't filling in because they were greyed out. I couldn't. And I should have been able to fill them in. And it was the boxes that they then used to calculate your fees. So it turned out I didn't know. Well, of course I didn't know. I'd never done a Gabriel return. I'd never had an FCA invoice. I didn't know how much it should be. And mid-2022, I thought, I don't want to do these anymore. I'm going to outsource it, give it to my compliance company. And immediately the consultant came back and said to me, are you paying FCA fees? And I said, yeah, of course I am. And I sent her the invoice, and I wasn't being charged for the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, and I wasn't being charged for FOS because they were the areas that were greyed out. Now, of course, she spotted it straight away. So told FCA, in good old FCA style, you know, several months down the line, chasing emails, nothing happened. I think around October, I got the current year's invoice, which was much, much bigger than I'd previously paid. So I thought, well, they've obviously amended that. And then a few weeks later, I got a little message come up, you've got an invoice on the portal. And I thought, that's funny. How can I have another invoice? I've just got one. And what they'd done is gone back and charged me for the prior year, the bit that I hadn't paid. And so I disputed the invoice because I said, well, in a much nicer way than this, I said, it's your problem. You set me up wrong. This obviously wasn't what I said, but I said, I gave you all the information you asked for. If you've made an error and didn't ask me for the right information, that's your problem. Didn't get an answer to that. Oh, no, I also said, because I was thinking this was 2022, and I thought, if they go back to 2017, this is going to be a fortune for me. So I also said in that, I've got no idea how many years you're going to go back. You need to bear in mind, I'm a sole advisor. No answer to that. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, I got an invoice from the previous year as well. So all of a sudden, I had 3 years worth of invoices come within a very short period of time, all had a payment date of like January or February. So I disputed that one as well, knowing that it wasn't going to do any good, but I thought I just need to dispute it. And a response came by email, which basically said, tough, the rules are you have to pay, and here's a link to the conduct of business rules. And that infuriated me. And I do recognise I should have paid, but it was how they dealt with it. And I thought, myself and the consultant have been chasing them for about 6 months, saying what's happening, no response. I thought if somebody had picked the phone up and spoken to me, I'd have probably been okay with it or sent me a decent email. But to just put invoices up on the portal, nobody said, I don't know if this is going to cause you a cash flow issue. Do you need a payment plan? No one said, I don't know what impact this is going to have on your business. It was just they couldn't care. And that's why, and at that stage, I thought, do you know what? I really can't have any external body having this much control over my business. So I think that was hit number one. It was, of course, then we're doing all the consumer duty, which to me, and everyone has a different view, was a total waste of time. Because my view always was, if you do a good job for your client, you're always going to do a good job. It doesn't matter what you've got written in some procedure manual, you are always going to want to do the right thing for your client. And if you're not interested in your client and you're only interested in making money, that's going to continue to be your approach, regardless of what you have written down. So to me, that was a waste of time, waste of effort, waste of money. So I didn't like that. And then for about 2 years, I had really, really struggled with admin support. And because, my view, the admin support available is absolutely atrocious. And I had outsourced probably about 8 different administrators who were all useless, just useless. So I got to the point that I was getting these people in, paying them quite a lot of money. They weren't able to do the job, and I was doing it myself. And I think just what did a friend of mine refer to it as institutionalized incompetence. And I really believe it is, because I was using these outsourced firms where you have the MD that you speak to, and then the MD puts an administrator in. And I was going back to the MD saying, there's issues here, which nobody was taking it on board. You know, one of the ladies, and these were all women, well, they were all females who were the administrators, and they were all females who were the MDs. So I'm just going to say she, and, one of them said to me, she phoned me up and said, we really need to be careful about whatever the administrator's name is. She's getting a little bit stressed because when she sends you stuff and it's wrong, you send it back to her and ask her to do it again. And I said, and she's getting a little bit stressed about that, and I want to help manage this. And I said, well, here's an idea. What if it was correct when it came to me in the first place? Then we wouldn't have the issue. And yet she was making it my problem that I was sending stuff back that was wrong. I had another instance where, again, the girl was not doing a good job. I spoke to the MD, we need to resolve this. And she said, don't worry, I'll speak to her. And then came back and said, let's have a 3-way discussion. She knows what she's going to do going forward. So it was, well, so-and-so has got this idea. And I said, great, what's happening then? And her brilliant idea was, in future, she will check work before she sends it to you. And my mouth fell open and I said, I'm horrified you didn't check work before you sent it to me in the first place. I said, I don't send work out before checking it. And, it's that sort of level. I was getting told off for sending work back to someone, telling her she'd done it wrong. This girl thought it was the best thing ever that she said she was going to check work before she sent it to me. And that, for me, is the standard of admin support that's available when you're outsourcing. So all of this happened and I just thought, actually, I need to get out of this. Well, I wasn't enjoying it anymore at all. And I thought, I just can't do this.
First of all, I'm just so grateful to you that you're sharing your lived experience. And what I hear in this is there's 3 reasons. The first one is regulator.
Yeah.
And the second one is, regulator.
Yeah.
And the third one, yes, institutional incompetence, poor administrative support. But I agree, yes. But how wonderful would it be if we don't have as much paper filling and form chasing and all these ridiculous administrative things, much of which you do just to CYB, just to cover, some sort of, it's incredible. And, we've lost, the profession has lost, a capable, competent, impactful professional, which is sad in a level. But, I know you're moving to greater things.
But I just think, personally, I think it's really hard as a sole advisor to run a business now, because even when I outsource compliance, and so your compliance support will give you templates and review what you do, and they're a huge support, but you still do a whole load of work. But as a sole advisor firm, you just have so many responsibilities, and the compliance side was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I didn't go into advice to be a compliance officer. And all of a sudden you're a compliance officer. That wasn't what I wanted to do at all.
Interesting. And so you started, I couldn't add anything to that because it's just spot on. I'm not sure actually that it's much easier for even in larger firms. You would have other problems, compliance related headaches, but they just exist in a different way. So the pressure on you as an advisor or as a business owner, it compounds, I guess, if you're both. It just gets more and more, unfortunately. But anyway, so you decided you've had enough in December. I'm trying to remember now. 2020.
So December 22.
2022. And so talk to me about how you went about the process of selling the business. Let's talk about it.
Well, I was introduced to Louise Jeffries of Gunner & Co., who I know you've done various webinars with and everything. And so I spoke to Louise probably around the February and went in with my long shopping list of this is what I want. I want a firm who will visit clients at home. I want a firm who will do sort of dimensional stroke Vanguard because I've moved all my clients onto this. So it doesn't make sense for them to go to a firm who's now going to talk active. I gave a huge long list of, in an ideal world, this is what I want. And of course, at that stage, and I did say, and I want to sell my business. I don't want to sell the clients. I want to sell the business because then I get entrepreneur's relief. And Louise said to me, because you've been very specific, I'm not going to bring you a huge number of interested parties. And I said, that's fine. I said, bring me one. You don't need to bring me loads. Bring me the right one. And that's all I need. And the very first firm that Louise introduced me to was Holborn Finance, who have subsequently merged with MKC Wealth. But she introduced me to Holborn Finance probably around the April. And as soon as I met with the MD, I just thought, actually, this is really a good fit. And he was interested. He said at the meeting, yeah, I'd like to take it further. And we agreed and came out. And Louise was then saying, well, I wonder if I need to do some more work, bring you some more parties who might be interested. And I said, no, this just feels right. So I said, I asked you to bring me one that was right, and you have done. So there's no point me looking for someone else as a comparison, because this is meeting everything that I want it to do.
And this thing that comes up, flat fee is going to be an issue when you come to sell your firm. Did it?
No, they used percentage, but again, what they were happy to do was take on the fixed fee as a starting point for the client. Right. So it also then became quite easy to value my company because we're valuing it off a fixed fee. We're not working out, well, if you're on a percentage and the market goes up and down, who knows what you're going to get. Mine was just, this is a fixed fee. So you tell me what's the multiple of that fixed fee that you're offering.
Do you think they did a back of a five-pack or more a comprehensive calculation in the background to say, well, your clients are quite wealthy, so they think they say, Mary is probably charging. Mary's probably charging 40 basis points, 40 basis points on a flat fee basis. If we brought this client on, we pay a multiple of flat fee. We brought this client in and they go to, I don't know, 60, 80, whatever it is. Oh, bingo. This is a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, it worked both ways in that my smaller clients were paying a larger fee to me as a fixed fee than they would, because I'd always worked out, because I wasn't doing percentages, well, this is the minimum fee I need. So my smaller clients were paying to me a higher fee than they would do when it changes to percentages. The larger clients typically were paying less to me than they change with percentages. But that was fine for me, because I think it's hard to change a client who's been paying a fixed fee. If you then change to a percentage and say, oh, you're paying less, well, the client's delighted. If you say, well, you're paying more, the client's not so happy. And that's quite a hard sell. And my view is you're going to be quite a long way down the line with the client before you can do that. You're talking, I'm going to say 2 years. Because if you turn around very early on and saying, well, I'm going to move your fee from this figure to percentage and your percentage is this figure, I think the client's inclined to say, well, actually, I don't want to work with you because I don't know you. Mary's done the work for years and charged me that. Why are you charging me so much? So my view was it's quite a long way down the line before they can do it. And if they have that conversation with the client and they can get the client to agree that they're worth more, let them have it.
Clients aren't unreasonable. If you try to raise the fees too high, then they'll vote with their feet. So no, I understand that. And how long did the whole process take before?
Well, it took much, much longer than it should have done. But the reason is I had the offer from Holborn Finance. things weren't moving very quickly. And I was thinking, what's going on? But Holborn Finance were in negotiation with MKC Wealth and obviously needed to get far enough along the process before they could tell me.
Yeah.
And then what happened is, so I had really, MKC wanted to go through the whole process and due diligence and everything with Holborn. Holborn were actually doing a few other acquisitions that had to happen. So I was just much further down the list than I would have liked. So we probably didn't start seriously doing the work, even though I had an offer and we had the heads of terms. We didn't seriously start doing work till about August. And my aim had been to complete it by Christmas. And the reason was I thought, if we wait till, January time, we're getting pretty close to tax year end. And I don't really want this all to be happening too close to tax year end, because if stuff gets missed. So the aim was to do it for just before Christmas. We missed the deadline really by a couple of hours. If the offices had been open a couple of hours longer, we would have done it. But the buyer's solicitors had gone home in the afternoon. I mean, really, despite the fact I know they'd been working till midnight the night before. So therefore it went into January. It was actually the 4th of January we completed.
And 4th of January, it was completed.
Yeah. So the process, if you think it probably properly happened, the work August, probably took, circa 4.5, 5 months, something like that.
How did he feel?
Sorry?
How did he feel to have sold the business?
Well, I think like everything, you're so looking forward to it happening that when it happens, you just think, oh, have I really done it? It took a little while for it to sink in. But yeah, it was, I have sold it. Haven't I? I'm without a doubt delighted, because I had decided this is not the right place for me anymore. And also tax year end coming up. At this stage, I'd got rid of admin support. I was doing all the admin myself. And I just thinking, I don't want to do another tax year end at all with all the stress that's there. And I'm doing all this admin. So the fact that we completed 4th of Jan, it's not great. I'm not doing tax year end, which was lovely.
Incredible stuff. Look, I want to be respectful of your time. We said this would take 40, 50 minutes. An hour later, we're still here. So I want to move things forward a little bit so we can wrap things up. So, of course, you kept the brand Wealth for Women. I've seen your website. I always like your website, Mary, like the just clean and luxurious is what I would
thank you.
The marywearing.co.uk. And you've always had this passion, and a lot of the things that you did even as a financial advisor was listening, hand holding, giving people confidence around a very challenging time of their life. Talk to me about what's next for Mary Wearing. What is it you're up to?
I've probably got 3 different services that I'm offering now, 2 of which I did. I've had for a long time the concierge service, which was under the Mary Wearing brand, which is a client pays me a monthly retainer for however many number of hours, and she can use that hours as she wants. So these are typically very wealthy women who just don't want to be bothered with any form of admin. They just want someone else to deal with it. And that could be anything from, I don't know, making sure the house insurance is in place and is correct. It's making sure I saw all the documents to go to the tax advisor because she doesn't want to do it. So it's basically whatever she wants done, I will sort it for her within the time structure. So I'm continuing with that service. And what it means now is with the new advisor, I will attend representing my client with her with all the new advisor meetings, so that I can explain things to her. I can answer all the questions the advisor is going to ask that she doesn't know the answer to. She doesn't care the answer to. She's got me to do it. So I've got that service. I've kept financial planning because it's unregulated. So financial planning generally for women going through divorce. The whole divorce process, particularly if it's a bit antagonistic, it could go on for years. So a typical advisor doesn't get involved until right at the end when there's a settlement. But she needs help all the way along it. And she needs help when they're doing the negotiations. Well, if you get this settlement, this is what it looks like. If you get this settlement, this is what it looks like. So there's a whole load of work that happens before the settlement. So I'm continuing that. And then, of course, when she gets the settlement, I'll say, well, I can introduce you to an advisor and I'm going to go along to the initial meeting and I'll explain everything. So there's a really smooth handover. And then I have always been so interested in the whole psychology around money. Why do you have someone who's got this amount of money but feels poor? She doesn't feel wealthy. And why have you got someone else with a much lower amount of money and she feels really wealthy? That whole psychology has always been so interesting to me. So I've done a lot of work around our attitudes to money, various money archetypes. So I don't know, mindset, money mindset, do you want to call it? I'm not quite sure what my word is, but I'm doing a lot of work around there with, and typically women, as to what's the stories that's going through their head that's causing them to have issues with money. So I've done work with financial advisors who say, well, I would like to charge X, and that's what they feel they would like to charge. But of course, they're in a conversation with a client, and then they say, and the fee is, and a totally different number comes out of their mouth, a much lower number. And of course, in their head, they're thinking, why did I say that? That wasn't the figure I want. But in the moment, when they're quoting it, they have, I don't know, it's the imposter syndrome, the lack of confidence, everything that is saying to them, you can't charge that fee because the client won't say yes. So I've done work with financial advisors as to what's happening there. And it's not saying, okay, go out and raise your fees, because there's a lack of congruence there. If I said to someone, go out and double your fees tomorrow, as soon as they start talking to the client and bring out double the fee, it's going to be quite obvious they don't feel comfortable about that. It's going to be obvious they don't feel they're worth it. So it's talking to them as to, well, let's discuss why you are worth that amount of money. One of my clients told me, well, I charge X, I'd like to charge Y, and then said, I'll charge that when I get my chartered qualification. So I said, so what's happening then? Are you giving a bit of a crap service now? And when you get your chartered qualification, you're going to give a really great service. And of course, she said, no, of course not. She said, I'm doing a really good job now. Well, then there's no need for you to wait to get these other initials to charge an extra fee if you believe you're doing a great service now. And she absolutely did, but she felt uncomfortable in a discussion. So a whole load of stuff around that, which is so interesting. Another lady I worked with, not an advisor, she's a coach. She used to do a whole load of stuff for free because she wanted to help people. And she told me what she now does. She used to have clients frequently contacting her, oh, can I speak to you about XYZ? And then she'd be on the phone, maybe half an hour, maybe more with them, and didn't charge for it. And now what she says to them is, when someone says, can I have some time? She says, okay, is this a quick 5-minute discussion or is this a paid for session? And again, I didn't tell her to say that. I just worked with her as to let's discuss what value you're bringing. And if you're bringing that value, why on earth would you not want to charge for that?
Just fascinating stuff. And I'm really grateful that you're sharing a lot of these insights and applying, your how many years of experience to in a slightly different way, but to help, people still. I think that's really powerful. And also the thing is, you are at the really, really front end of a trend that I am beginning to see, which is let's say ex financial advisor still, no, forget the word X, that's the wrong phrase. What I'm trying to say is this separation between financial planning and a clearer, harder separation between financial planning, financial coaching, and financial advice. There is a movement of around the non-intermediated financial advice, where they would do, this group of people, as you know, would do a lot for the client to get them ready for advice. Now, some will argue that, well, a good financial advisor should be able to do all of these things. But we know the world doesn't work that way. So how are you thinking about this trend of non-intermediating financial advice or financial planning or planners?
I think there's actually a real gap for someone to do financial planning and the financial coaching mindset together. Right. Because I saw it myself before I worked this out. Clients who you can show them a financial plan, oh, look what happens, you've got loads of money, but because you haven't worked on what's happening in their head, they don't feel comfortable spending it. And again, you can't just say, well, you could, there's no point just saying to someone, oh, go out and spend, you've got loads of money. They've seen a graph, you haven't changed the story in their head. The story in their head is they can't afford to spend lots of money. So until you've changed that story, they're not paying any attention to your graph. It doesn't mean anything to them. And then I think you've got a lot of coaches, but coaches can help change the story in your head. But if they're not doing a financial plan, what you don't want is someone wandering around feeling hugely wealthy, but actually they're not saving enough money because nobody's done a financial plan for them to say, well, I'm glad you feel so wealthy, but actually you need to put more money away. So I think there's a real gap there that financial planners should understand the whole mindset issue, because otherwise showing someone a nice graph isn't enough. You've got to change what's happening in their head. And again, you don't want to change what's happening in their head without proving they've got enough money. And that's where, that's why I've gone into this area. That's where I think there's a gap at the minute, that there's not enough people who've got both those skills.
I couldn't agree more with you on the gap. And, I look forward to seeing you out there in the world, helping change that. Mary, is there any sort of last word, parting words that you wanted to give to the audience, and we can say goodbye to the audience?
No, I guess what I'd say is just, for me, it's really important I enjoy what I do, because I'm not going to be honest, that whatever you get paid isn't enough if you're not enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I think it's too easy for people to get in a role. Maybe they're not enjoying it because things have changed and they stick with it. I think my view is there's a whole load of other stuff you can do. Take the bits you like, and that's what I did. Take the bits you like and get rid of the rest, and just go and enjoy doing your job. Because that's what I say. To me, no amount of money would cover hating your job at all. So just find the bits in your job that you really love and then go and do a role that works on those and just get rid of everything else, or outsource it or whatever you can do. Don't have a whole load of hours in the day that you're not enjoying.
Mary Waring, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. You've taken us through this life cycle. I feel like it's a full life cycle of a financial planner, starting a firm, growing the firm, selling the firm, reinventing yourself, and making an impact on many people along the way. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, evidenced by the amount of time it's taken on the podcast. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Abraham.
That's a wrap on today's show. Massive thanks to my production crew, especially Jake Osha, Melissa Canham, and the entire team. And of course, to our sponsor, Timeline, the market-leading provider of integrated planning technology and model portfolio service to advisors. I do hope you've enjoyed today's show. Head over to Apple Podcast and give us your review there. Until next time, goodbye.